Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the third instalment of the BECBC Shadow Board's COVID-19 podcast. These podcasts are all about speaking to our BECBC member companies and talking about how they've dealt with COVID-19 throughout these quite difficult times. Businesses may have had to close, may have had to adapt, may have had to come up with like a new working practice. So we're just chatting to different members about how they've dealt with this. So today on the call, we've got Joanne Chambers, who is from Lakeland Capabilities, who's actually an occupational psychologist, I believe. And then we have Lee Grears, who's the founder of Responsive Limited, which is an NDT testing company. And also recently has set up Cumbria. Is it Cumbria is me or Cumbria is me?
There's a bit of a pun on that, isn't there? It could be Cumbria is me, it could be Cumbria SME. I'm not going to in either sense. Whatever suits you.
Well, for today, we'll call it Cumbria is me, shall we? That's how I first read it. So Cumbria is me, which is a new initiative about trying to get people to spend locally. And as well, we also have Dolman joining us, who's head of operations for CambridgeHOK, which are a horticultural engineering and construction company. So welcome all. So that's a sort of very brief introduction, but could we go around and just hear a bit more about kind of how business was before coronavirus and sort of what services do you offer? Perhaps starting with you, Joanne.
Okay, so as you said, I'm a business psychologist. I started up Lakeland Capabilities about 9 years ago now. My range of services is basically anything to do with behaviour in the workplace, applying psychology to help people or organisations learn more about employee behaviour, that kind of thing. I've got a number of different business streams. For about 5 years now, I've done a lot to do with wellbeing and mental health in the workplace. That's usually workshops and sort of consultancy basis. I do a lot of psychometrics for different purposes, recruitment, selection, assessment, that kind of thing. And then one of the sort of more niche things I do is I offer assessments for neurodiverse conditions like dyslexia, and that's either in the workplace or students at university, all adults. So I'm a home-based business. So the change for me, I sort of was quite well set up when all the lockdown came in, I thought, sort of naively, because I was a home-based business. I would go out to visit clients, but actually a lot of the work I had lined up was face-to-face delivery. So initially that was all cancelled in those sort of first few months, and you recognise really quickly how much work depends on sort of less than a 2 metre distance between people. So all of my assessments, psychological assessments, you wouldn't do if there was more than a 2 metre distance. It wasn't possible. So I had a lot of work cancelled actually, which was a real shock because I sort of thought it would be okay and things wouldn't get cancelled. But I think there was just that shock reaction, wasn't there? And I think I got sort of swept up in some blanket cancellations as well of work that we could have delivered or we could have taken digital, but this sort of decision at the time was taken to sort of take out huge delivery sort of sections, unfortunately.
Okay, and Lee, so I mentioned that you do NDT, and you're obviously sort of known in West Cumbria quite a lot, but could you introduce a bit more about the businesses that you run as well?
Yeah, so Responsive sort of split into 3 different businesses really as it's grown. So we've got Responsive non-destructive testing, radiography, x-rays. You imagine if you break your arm and you go to hospital and you get an x-ray undertaken. We do that for components, welds, whatever it may be, for various different industries. Generally in Cumbria, it could be nuclear, further down south we're looking at petrochemical and so on. Then we split off into a training arm as well. We realised that we had a big training need within Responsive, and we were subbing that work away from Cumbria to whether it be Barnsley, Sheffield, places like that being our nearest. So we decided to set up our own training business, and then from that then also mechanical testing, which is the destructive side of the non-destructive testing. So we get a component, a material, and we basically pull that apart and record its parameters and prove its worth or not for that matter. And then obviously Cumbria's Way, which is a bit of a new thing, yeah.
Yeah, so just a bit more about Cumbria's Me. So what was the kind of mindset behind setting that up actually?
There's always been, in the back of my mind, there's always been a lack of local buy-in, a lack of local, maybe belief in the services, local knowledge potentially in what was offered by some of the companies locally. Speak to tier 2, certainly tier 1s, and they may not know where to buy a particular service within Cumbria. And whilst I've always wanted to do that, the timing I don't think was ever correct, whereas now there's a massive emphasis on buy local, even the buy-in from the local councils and so on, where I think it's on the back of the COVID pandemic, where you've got a lot of little local suppliers where they're doing really good things in the supply chain as free of gratis, if you like. They're delivering sandwiches, they're doing all sorts of good things like that. And it's just to jump on the back of that and try and not let that dwindle away and be wasted in 6 months, 12 months time, however long it might be, and totally forgotten about, but to keep that going, to keep that buy local going, and not just local as in Copeland for me, being in Whitehaven, but the whole of Cumbria. So look at the trade in between them 6 areas, which generally do work in sort of isolation and call each other names between boundaries of Whitehaven and Workington and stuff like that. But that's where it came about. It's just to keep that going.
Fantastic, great to hear it, Lee. And then Ian as well. So I believe that CambridgeHOK has got some 4 service streams ranging from like energy right through to vertical farming, which is obviously on the up at the moment. You know, no pun intended, but it's on the up. But could you introduce a bit more about what CambridgeHOK do and sort of where you guys are based as well?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Adam. So CambridgeHOK are a small, medium enterprise. Been trading since the current 3 directors bought the company around about 15 years ago. And we're based near Brough, which is just west of Hull, not far off the M62. But generally work all over the UK and occasionally overseas. We generally help our customers achieve specific goals by providing design, consultancy, construction and in-service support in the 4 key sectors that you refer to, Adam. So the first one, just to put a little bit more meat on the bone, indoor vertical farming is becoming quite popular, where customers grow local, fresh, high quality produce in a controlled and reliable format. This can range from commercial scale operations where seeds go into a door and effectively they're not touched by human hand until plants or food comes out of the hatch and subject to total automation. Or it could be just a small container that grows herbs and things like that, which is quite popular in some areas of London. Where we really started our life was in the glasshouse sector. We are the UK's only commercial glasshouse manufacturer, where we develop large-scale commercial glasshouses, both for growing, but also research and leisure purposes. Quite a few garden centres we've worked at, for instance. And again, the idea though is really creating the optimum environment using modern technology in terms of construction, but also controlling heat, automation, and really, maximising the return investment for our customers. And final 2 areas really are energy, where we provide reliable and efficient energy technology to help our customers save typically 25% on their energy costs. And that could be a large scale 8 to 12 megawatts combined heat and power operation. Or it could be automated technology to control motor speed, how much electricity they're using, etc. Started life with the obvious connection with glasshouses. Glasshouses use a lot of heat and power to grow, and also a lot of CO2 is needed to get the balance right to optimize the growing cycle. And having done all of those things, we then started a construction business up, which allowed specific products to be built on site, but also then started to expand into other sectors of construction for of an industrial nature, but uses the same basic building blocks: steel frames, concrete, bricks and mortar, and everything else in between, really. So that's CambridgeHOK in 2 minutes, really.
Brilliant. So Joanne's kind of covered this a little bit anyway, but we'd like to go around and ask everyone how COVID-19 has affected how your businesses can function daily. So obviously, Joanne, you were home-based anyway, but you've suffered mass cancellations. So is there anything else that it's affected? Have you had to furlough staff or anything like that?
No, so my business is just me. Anyone else I bring in, I would do on a sort of an associate basis anyway, so they're not my staff. So it was just me. I was in that annoying position of being a limited company director, so if I furloughed myself, I was effectively shutting the business. So I was kind of a bit trapped and in the end, keeping it open, it didn't make sense to financially furlough myself the amount I was going to get. So I stayed open. But yeah, I mean, as a home-based business, the challenge was less, I think, in terms of I've been using Zoom for years to deliver stuff, and I've got the kit at home. I've got the internet connect. You know, I'm well set up. So I think compared to other people, I think I probably had a bit of a head start on that one. The challenge was sharing it with the rest of the family, who were also suddenly all at home and on my patch. So that was the difficulty, actually. I was set up, I was having to hand out all my devices and laptops to kids and partner. So yeah, I was affected that way. And I think just when you're used to working from home, you're really efficient and quiet in your own space. I do go out to clients all the time, but when I'm at home, I'm really sort of super efficient, and that wasn't happening at all because everybody was here. So just working smoothly has just been really difficult. And everything's online, and everybody's trying to be online at the same time, aren't they? And I've had challenges with that one in terms of we're all competing for bandwidth on our internet.
I think that's quite common for a lot of people trying to juggle that home life. What about you and Lee? Have you found that the same thing trying to juggle? Are you home as well?
Home life for me, yeah. I mean, I've got three kids, all into gaming. To be fair to our internet, it's held up okay. It's been fairly decent, and worst case scenario, I suppose I can connect to my phone and I've gained some extra bandwidth. But it hasn't been bad around the home, to be fair. It's been okay. It's better than I thought it would have been, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say.
Have you been able to do like your normal day-to-day business functions at home, or has it had to change slightly?
Yeah, so other than me going out specifically to maybe pick up a manual task that I wouldn't necessarily do all the time now, try and work on the business instead. A lot of that work that I would do is generally laptop based. I suppose the thing I've missed out on is the face-to-face meetings. I know we can do that by Zoom and Teams. The downside to that is that you find yourself in a lot more meetings on Zoom and Teams than you did if you were to jump in the car and say them face-to-face. And I'm not 100% sure whether they're more productive than they would have been by seeing less people face-to-face, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think everyone's getting a bit zoomed out. There's no substitute for face-to-face meetings, I don't think. There is. Zoom's great, it's helped us all through a crisis, but face-to-face is always going to be best in some circumstances.
Yeah, it's done well for us. We were massively on Teams anyway, so we have facilities in Whitehaven, we have facilities at Lily All in Workington, so different sort of areas where we've had to work remotely regardless. The inspectors that we send out, they work remotely almost daily. So for us, we were in quite a good position for that happening, other than the inspectors still needing to, they're our product, other than them inspectors needing to go to a physical workplace to be able to carry out the inspection and obviously fetch some money back in. That's been the most difficult part, but remotely, that's worked well.
Brill.
How about staff, Lee, as well? So obviously, how have you had to furlough staff, or have they continued working?
Yeah, a bit of both. So we haven't closed at all, but we have had to furlough some staff because of a downturn in work. So it was strange when it came about, because we had a really, really good March, even though that was only the 3 weeks worth of March. We were still mopping up some stuff from December. Brilliant time, and obviously if that had happened any other year, it would have been absolutely fantastic time, and maybe not so much now, but something to carry through. So we had to furlough some staff. We fell into a position similar to Joanne. So when we've set our 3 businesses up, we give 3 different people directorships within them businesses, and we give them a shareholding. Now, this only happened in November last year, so training services run by Matthew, we give him 10%, and he owns part of that business, and he's the director. Obviously paid as similar to Joanne's situation with PAYE, dividends and stuff like that. The same as Gareth at non-destructive testing, the same as Tony at mechanical testing. Then there's myself and my wife that are both directors as well, and Harish down in Manchester. So when you put that into context, really we're saying to them people there, listen, we might not be able to pay your wages, and by the way, if we furlough you and do it properly as per PAYE only and not dividends, it works out about £580 a month that we can pay you. And one of the ones was even worse, because they were PAYE in November when they started for us. So they were getting taxed based on furlough payments coming in now when we put them on furlough, or getting taxed based on a 12-month rolling average. So it got even less. So it's a difficult situation to say to people that although you've given them some of the business and some buy-in, some ownership, and you know, you're expecting that commitment from them, at the same time, we might not be able to pay you, which is a difficult position to find yourself in. As it happens, we've been okay. That's carried through. We've carried on paying. They've got the full wages and so on. I think the initial shock was you don't know what's happening. So 24th of March, after Boris's announcement and so on, you sat there and you think, well, what does that mean? You don't really know until tomorrow what that means. And you're phoning around some of the places where you're about to send staff saying, are you still open? We can still provide this service. We're not on the list of closures, and neither are you for that matter, but are you still going to be open? What we found there is that whilst we could carry on the work we had, the new work coming in was non-existent. So that started to dwindle away. And then last month we had our worst month ever. So we've done okay in March. We've done really well in March based on February and January and so on. But coming away from that, you could see it just start to drop off totally. Between March and last month, we were 90% down on our take-ins. So we need money to pay the bills and pay all them wages and everything else. It starts to take effect. So, and that's where we are now. We're coming out the back of that this last week. We've picked up quite a bit of work. We've got some new orders. It hasn't helped locally, and not to bash Sellafield, not by any means, but they've furloughed nearly every one of their staff apart from those that were critical to plant, and rightly so. I'll not argue with that. I think that was the correct thing to do. However, no orders come out beyond that point for the whole of the supply chain to any tier 2s, 3s, 4s, and certainly not to us via any of them routes. So it puts us in a difficult position whilst everybody sat at home and sun shining, and that was great for a month, wasn't it, Joanne?
Yeah, enjoyed that one.
Yeah, obviously beyond that, it sort of died a death, but we're getting there now. Everybody's back off furlough. All the facilities are open. We've just taken on a new facility on Friday, so we're doubling the size of our machining and mechanical testing. We've got plans for another business as well over the next few weeks, so it's promising. It looks good. It looks better than it did a few weeks ago.
Yeah, hopefully we're on the end of it. Ends in sight now, hopefully. Ian, how about you then? That must be quite interesting to see how you guys have worked through the pandemic. Were you still able to open? How did it work?
Yeah, it was quite interesting and quite amazing. We were busy before the lockdown started and still forecast to have our best year ever in terms of financial results, which is quite amazing, really. I mean, the biggest difficulty when lockdown started was really about uncertainty, that, you know, what was going to happen, how far was lockdown going to be extended, which really made planning difficult. And, you know, typically we've probably got 30 projects, you know, going on across the UK, and some of those were slowing down. Some access was restricted, particularly at the government sites. We do a lot of work at the horticultural aspects of universities. They just sort of shut overnight. But we kept a key part of our workforce going. The factory was slimmed right down, but remained producing some form of output. Quite a few of our staff were furloughed, and a few still are. But we've kept the core balance of our services going, because I guess at the end of the day, you know, plants don't stop growing and need facilities to keep them going, or people have invested in very large new farms. So we're quite lucky to work with the Dyson family in their farming business, and just building a new 750-ton strawberry farm for them, which is huge. And of course, they've already made commitments to purchase their plants and exchange contracts where they're going to sell their products. So if they haven't got a new facility, which is starting from a piece of turf and a green site, then they have a difficulty. So it's forced us to keep going, which has been really good. But our working practices have had to change, you know, quite radically. And we've probably had a weekly planning session, just looking at the implications of how we can stay trading and assessing our risk assessments and all various measures put in place. But yeah, it's been interesting times, really. But luckily, we've kept going. It's been hard work, but I think it's really one of the interesting things is how people have interacted with each other. We clearly had to invest early on in technology, such as Teams, you know, Zoom's equivalent, which people hadn't really ever used in the business. You know, luckily I come from a different background where that's our sort of second nature of holding meetings on a regular basis. But, you know, it took quite a bit of going to coax staff into using it, becoming comfortable with it, and just keeping their routines going while they were largely home-based rather than being office-based, really.
Brilliant. It's great to hear that you're all adapting to the change as well. And I mean, you've all actually sort of, in your own way, covered the next question, but that was leading on to sort of, right, that's sort of dealt with the past and sort of what was happening. We're now looking at today going forward in terms of how is the pipeline looking for you? What lasting changes that perhaps you've learned during lockdown are you going to have in place for the future? And just a bit about how the sort of general future for your business looks, really. So I know we've touched on it already, but do you want to go around again and just see, Joanne, have you got any sort of major takeaways from lockdown that you're going to implement into your business going forward?
Yeah, so I did. In the past, I've offered workshops that would have been face-to-face for a business. And to be honest, it was a service that I struggled to sell, really. I think when you don't have business premises, putting on open courses is quite a high-risk thing to do. So I wasn't investing much into it. And that's something that I've really upped selling over with the restrictions. I think because I've got a lot of specialism in wellbeing and mental health, and the demand for that is absolutely huge at the moment. So I've taken all my workshops, and that's what I did in April, really, when I had no work. I sat and sort of converted all the workshops I had into a digital format, and I've been selling those. I think probably about mid-May that kicked off, really. The demand for that started to come in. And I think that's something I'm going to try and continue to offer even when the restrictions change, because I think businesses will still want, there will be a demand for face-to-face workshops, I think, again, but I do wonder if businesses will want these 90-minute sessions webinar. They're really efficient, the costs are a lot less. So I've sort of rolled out a series of online webinars now, which I'm hoping to keep offering. So that's been sort of a real success for me. Some of the stuff I'm doing is definitely workaround. The dyslexia assessments, I've now taken them remote, but that's been a real headache to get going. I think it's a service that you've got to keep offering, because there's people with disabilities in the workplace that need to be able to access that service, but it's hard work remote. There's a lot of protocol and restrictions in place because it comes under Department for Education and that kind of stuff. And I think that's something that, despite the massive investment we've put into to get it going remotely, we'll have to go back to face-to-face. I don't think that is something that would change. So that feels quite frustrating, sort of the effort and the technology investment that's gone into sort of getting that going. But I just don't think long-term psychologists are going to work remotely in that way, I think. And it's copyrighted materials as well. I think the copy might be removed. So I've sort of had a mixed bag, really. I mean, I was using Zoom already. I've been sort of really innovated. I mean, how we're running the dyslexia assessments is really sort of pushing the limits of Zoom. I've got 4 screens on the go, sort of managing to assess people. But then on the flip side, the online webinars have been such an easy fix and such high demand. And I just think that's a really nice format to deliver to people. And Rhianna's been on one of my workshops, and they're just easy. And I think that is something that probably I will push in the future. And definitely had ups and downs as to how to get the best format and that kind of thing, which is tricky when it wasn't my background to deliver stuff on video. Yeah,
it definitely sounds, Joanne, it definitely sounds like the workshops, moving to a more online basis could be a great thing. Like, yes, you can't replace the face-to-face, but as we spoke to a few people on these podcasts, and one person that runs an events company said the future of her events might be changing. So some companies that have had to be forced to have an event online rather than in person, the company's now standing back and going, hang on a second, we had everyone there, a greater attendance, we had less travel, less pollution, less emissions. So there are some benefits to it, but as you say, it will never fully replace that sort of face-to-face, certainly from a more sensitive subject that you might deal with.
It is, yeah, it's tricky, but I've been quite surprised. I think when you're doing wellbeing and mental health work, sort of workshops, you would think you would need to be in the room, but I think people are just in that space at the moment that they'll share anything. I think everybody recognises that everybody's struggling. So I've done some workshops where I put everybody in breakout rooms and give people sort of slightly smaller spaces to interact, but people are really sharing a lot, whether they will next year and whether that format would work so well when we're not sort of in crisis state. But I think for the time being, it's worked brilliantly, and I've been quite surprised at sort of the interaction that you can get remotely. It's worked pretty well.
Fantastic. And Lee, obviously you talked about some quite grand plans for expansion, new offices. So obviously things are still on the way up for you. But I suppose NDT, that's something that can't be done over Zoom, even though Zoom's everywhere. But so you still have very much a need for actually being there with people and actually sort of hands-on work. But how does the sort of pipeline look for you going forward?
Yeah, you're right, actually. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe I should think of a way. Maybe on the innovative side of how do we do NDT remotely. I'm not 100% sure that's possible at all, other than the visual side of it. But yeah, we can't carry out X-rays without physically being there and having a product, so it's impossible to do. I think the bonus for us at the minute is that we sent as many people home as we possibly could, and it was sort of the week before lockdown, really. We're in a good position with that. Even our external phone lines work over MS Teams, so we don't have physical phone lines, and we don't have physical phones for that matter. You could always answer the call on your mobile on the Teams app, and that was before lockdown, so it worked quite well. What's good for us is that almost overnight we've doubled our office space by sending all them people home, and I think one of the things taken forward is I'm not 100% sure I'm going to fetch some people back into that office environment. It's worked. We've got no less output, certainly not by the end of the week at least, than we had beforehand. So I can't, other than the sanity of the people, I just cannot think of a reason to fetch them back into that environment. So maybe an 80-20 split, possibly 80% of the time at home, 20% come into the office if you need to, or if you physically need to do something or interact with some people, whatever that might be. Not to restrict them totally, but just to give them the option. We'd have never thought of that beforehand. We'd apply the same as we did in NDT or mechanical testing. We'd just think that the people have got to be there 100% of the time, very visual and everything else for it. So for us, it's been a good eye opener. And it's given us extra space and all that kind of good stuff, and people the ability to work from home. It's just a winner.
Brilliant. Yeah, I would say that's the thing I've heard most from these podcasts. The biggest lasting change is employers seeing the benefit and allowing their sort of workforce, their staff, to work from home, because as you say, the output isn't reduced, and sometimes actually it's even improved in less time commuting and things. So that's a huge change that will sort of the world will never look quite the same as pre-COVID in terms of how people accept where you work. Anywhere can be your office, really. So Ian, I think you're currently in your home office. I'm assuming, not at work. Are you going to find that you're going to continue that as well, or how do things look in the future for CambridgeHOK?
Yeah, very interesting. I spent quite a bit of time at home just recently, but quite used to sort of commuting around the UK. But I think one of the greatest benefits that lockdown has created is it's effectively given us more office space, the point that Lee referred to, by actually encouraging home working. So one of the tasks I had was to look at either acquiring a new office, expanding our existing facilities. Actually, we've now proved we can successfully get the capacity back by just staying exactly where we are, but keeping some remote working going. And it's given all the benefits that you've talked about, really, Adam, in terms of different way of working. It's increased our efficiency. The fuel bill's gone down probably £200 a month or thereabouts, which is great. And gives us greater flexibility, and just looking at people's working hours. Some people are probably working more hours being home based than actually they were in the office. So again, that's given us a bit of an advantage. But the key thing, you've got flexibility of that balance. And I think the other thing that really has come out of all of this more than anything is that we recognise we're a community, and by that I mean a community, suppliers, customers, ourselves, our colleagues and our colleagues' families, and we've had to sort of get through this together, really. We've all been affected in some shape or form by the lockdown, but all have really got the common goal to deliver services, stay trading and operate as efficiently as we can. And how people have interacted has been quite interesting. The successful suppliers have been really those that are proactive, generally have a very good online trading presence. We've recently revamped our website, which really is used for sort of marketing purposes rather than online selling of maintenance services, which is something on the to-do list to be set up and developed. But there's quite a few things coming out, and the people that have been really successful, particularly our partners, have probably become closer to us now as partners by the way they've assisted us, and we've supported them to deliver during these difficult times. and that's been really good to see, really. And so summing up, really, I hope it continues. We'll certainly look at the balance of home to office working. You can't beat face-to-face communication. You need to do that. I think for people's well-being, as well as having some of the difficult conversations at times and solving some of the complex engineering challenges. But it's given us all a new set of tools that we've now, I think, become confident at using and happy, which is also important to deal with it as we go forward, really. So we're not out of the woods yet. There's some significant challenges. Probably one of the biggest in our industry is availability of materials. It's great, all these shops investing heavily in Perspex screens, but we need Perspex at times to try and build some of our glass houses, and a couple of prisons at the moment that we also work at need Perspex replacing. Just can't get it anywhere in the world. So there's still some challenges out there, but it's all going in the right direction, I think.
Great. It's actually really interesting. I've not thought about that whole Perspex thing and how that would affect other industries that rely on it. These podcasts really open up my eyes to different industries. It's great. Yes. So we just want to finish off with a bit of fun, really, to end on a light-hearted note. We want to know a bit more about you guys personally. What have you done during lockdown that's surprising? What have you achieved? It could be anything at all. It doesn't have to be personal. It could be something to do with your business. But let's start with Joanne. What have you been up to?
I think I horrified myself by maybe how much social isolation I was living in before, actually, because my life didn't change that much. I was a bit because I already worked from home. I didn't have that massive dynamic shift that other people seem to have. So yeah, that was a bit of an eye-opener, really, in terms of maybe I should have been doing more before lockdown. But what I've really noticed is the time in your day. I've got 2 kids that do a lot of sport, and all that got cancelled. So my life before seemed to be spent ferrying them round to their various sports activities. So for the first time in years, I've genuinely got fit, and I've had time to do sports. I've done so my purpose-built office is a bike cave now. So I got into Zwift, and we've been doing virtual cycling, but as groups as well, because we help run a kids bike club. So we've got all the kids on Zwift as well. So that's been brilliant, actually. And that, when you really sort of surprise yourself at what you can deliver remotely. And we've got sort of 10, 12 kids on Zwift rides together. So I've really enjoyed that. And just a lot of fitness that was not prioritising before because I didn't really have the time. But other than that, life wasn't that much different. I baked anyway. So the whole home baking thing didn't particularly sort of shock me. My husband got furloughed my husband shut his business for 12 weeks. So that was good, actually. That sort of early days when it really did feel like a full-on crisis, it was quite nice to have all of the family at home. I'm fending on my own at the moment because he's back with the business open. So looking back, yeah, it was nice to have everybody at home and just sort of family walks, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I clearly did go out enough before.
What about you, Lee? Has anything surprised you, or you quite like Joanne and not really noticed the difference? Have you done anything to be proud of?
Yeah, I shouldn't be smiling at Joanne saying any of that, should I? Because I don't work from home generally, but I've realised that I am a massive recluse also. I didn't realise that or didn't see that I was missing people or anything like that, because it's just not generally how I operate. Usually it's get out of bed, get dressed, go to work, come back and do the same again. Eat, sleep, rave, repeat, I suppose. So nothing new, nothing surprising, other than obviously I got to spend a lot more time at home, and I won't be ashamed in saying it, we done absolutely nothing. It was great, especially while the sun was shining for all them 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, if ever there was a time for a lockdown and the sun was about to come out, it's probably the best summer we've had, or one that I can remember, because generally I'd have been in the car driving around the country. So no, it's nothing interesting, nothing new. Surprise, probably plans to open up a new business. That's maybe, I don't know, hopefully it'll be a wise decision, let's say, and probably surprise a lot of people, but we'll see how that pans out.
Yeah, it definitely has been nice, Lee, to actually take some time, hasn't it, and just sort of stop and have a little think about stuff and almost appreciate your surroundings without going from meeting to meeting or even social event to social event. It was almost just time to chill and sort of think, right, where do we go from here, sort of thing. So Ian as well. So have you done anything different? Were you the ones buying the flour and doing all this avid baking, or?
Well, I guess Joanne has put me to shame really. Unlike getting fitter and losing calories, I've probably put some of the lockdown calories on. Not too many though, hopefully. But having more time at home rather than working very long hours in the day away at the office or wherever has really given me time to have the sort of daily walk with the dog at lunchtime, which I really enjoy. So, a quick 3-kilometre walk with the dog has been really great fun, and something I just wouldn't normally get time to do until the weekend. So I've really enjoyed that. And joking aside, I've never done any gardening since I was a teenager when I used to help my grandma out. So we've had a greenhouse that's quite good when we moved house a few years ago, but never been used. It's just sat there like a white elephant. And in the sort of working in the growing world, I thought, well, let's put this to use. So we've got the greenhouse cleared out, and amazingly, stuff started growing and producing crops. So will I continue it? Probably, yeah, to a small extent. I can always think of other things to do with my time, but reacquainted myself, I would say, with some gardening skills. So it's good to have a bit of fresh produce. So they're the two things I've really done differently, but it's been good. And it's also been good to spend more time at home with the wife, who's also been working at home for a lot of the time. So it's been really good.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, clearly, notwithstanding the challenges and the sort of issues it has brought to some people, undoubtedly there has been some absolute positives that people have taken away from it. And, I've certainly changed some of my working practices, and just those small things about, going for a walk, as you mentioned, Ian, or, more time at home, or even just, as I say, stopping and appreciating, a sort of quiet day and not just rushing to the next thing. It's been really good, actually. So hopefully we can all learn from that, definitely going forward. Anyway, that's probably all our questions, really. So thanks for all sharing your stories. Really interesting to hear from 3 very different businesses, all probably quite complementary in their own ways. But nice to see that you are all BECBC members, and you're obviously active in your support for the cluster. So that's the last thing, really. Just to sort of thank you for your time, and wish you all the best getting back to some sort of normal. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.